Welcome to Crypta Librorum, the hidden library where fear tells its tales. Let's open today's page and find out what fear has in store for us. Carnivals, carnivals, carnivals. We all love them, don't we? Well, I don't know. Maybe not. But let me tell you a story about a mother. A mother that kills her son. And if that was not enough, she tears him apart with her bare hands. Rips everything limb to limb and carries his head through the streets like a trophy, while she's screaming, not in pain, but in triumph. When the madness fades, when she finally sees what she's been holding, the most haunting question is not, what have I done? That is really obvious, isn't it? The haunting question is, who was I when I did this? Late 5th century BCE. Euripides writes this into the Jacques. Also, my pronunciation might be different from what you heard with these words. That's because I'm Greek and I'll try to use most of the names in the Greek form. Euripides writes this into the play Jacques. I mean, you will say that's theater, sure. But it's also a warning about states of ecstasy, where you can step so far outside yourself that you do not recognize your own hands anymore. And if you do come back, you still have to live with what the not you did. The reason we're using the word ecstasy to describe this is because it literally means in Greek to be taken outside of that state, of that form. So ecstasy does not always have to do with pleasure or enjoyment. It has to do when you're no longer in control, to that point that your own body is a total different item, a different thing from you. Your mental state does not match your physical state. You're parted from one another. Now, let's jump forward. February 2026, Carnival season. You're picking out a costume, you're planning which parties you will hit, deciding how far will you push this year. And there's this detail you've probably never questioned before. It's so normal. Carnival has an expiration date, a clear end date, a hard stop, a reminder that it must end. The names change depending where you are. Carnival, Mardi Gras, Carnival, Apokries, but the structure repeats everywhere. For a short window, you're allowed to become something else. Hell, anything else. Then you're required to return. And that, my friends, that's the protection. Because the real question isn't whether humans crave release. In case you're wondering, we do. We always have, and we always will. The question is whether we can lose ourselves and still come back here. Whether there is a you version solid enough to survive this dissolution. Let me show you what dissolving looked like in an ancient myth, what it looks like across Carnival history, and why the fear of dissolving might be the most human thing about you. Ancient Greece, beyond the city walls, up in the mountains at night, Kytheronas, Parnassos, doesn't really matter which, but let's stick with Kytheronas for now. No street lights, only firelight, drums, cold air, and sounds that resemble voices. The Menades are up there, the devout followers of Dionysos. Menada come from menome, means to be mad, to get enraged, to rave. A rough translation would be the raving ones. They left their homes, left their husbands, their children, their identities as wives, mothers, daughters, sisters, and all of them walked into the mountains wearing fawn skins, ivy wreaths twisted in their hair. They are carrying the thyrsus, fennel staff wrapped in ivy tipped with a pine cone. This represents the staff of Dionysos, and this is what they're carrying. Some accounts even say that they're handling snakes, live snakes wrapped over their arms, their necks, like it's some kind of a jewel. They won't even flinch. They won't even notice. They just enter a trance. They've been dancing for hours, maybe days. Time does not work the same up there. This is not a choreography, don't be mistaken. This is endurance. Moving, dancing, jumping until the body gives up. Drums loud enough that thoughts cannot stay intact. Singing that stops being words and become pure sounds and vibrations. Voices merging with voices until you can't tell where one woman ends and another one begins. Then the sacrifice arrives. Sometimes goat, sometimes a bull, Dionysus' sacred animal. And here is the quote-unquote miracle. They do not use knives for the sacrifice. Instead, they use their bare hands. Sparagmos, that's the word that describes this sacrificial tearing apart. And that's what it means. That sparagmos means tearing something apart. In modern Greece, we also use it to describe immersed pain. I wonder why. So, ancient sources say that they could tear apart, and I want you to think deep about that, full-grown bulls. The strength shouldn't be possible. These are normal, everyday women living in the society. But in this state, they have the power that was given to them from the communion with the god. Everything is covered with blood. And then the next step of this ritual is omophagia. That in Greek means eating something raw. No cooking, no barrier, no distancing from the animal. Instead, tear and eat, tear and eat. Why? Because this is the communion they have through the god's sacred animal. By taking its raw flesh into their bodies, they become one with Dionysos. The boundaries have dissolved. The self has dissolved. They all become the god. In this state, as I said with ecstasies, you're not you anymore. You're kind of possessed. Or some would say, maybe that's how you're truly free. Or that's how you're divine. But once you're outside yourself, the question that beckons our attention is, who is steering? Let's talk about the story. King Pentheus of Thebes bans this, and there's a bigger story behind it. So the point is that he forbids the worship of Dionysos. Due to things that happened before that, he truly believes that this is madness, it is dangerous, and his mother, Agave, and other women need to come home to stop this insanity. Dionysos does not like that, and he tricks Pentheus. Instead of going with armies against the Menades, instead Dionysos, disguised, convinced Pentheus to go and spy on them. And so Pentheus does that. He goes to Mount Kitheron and he spies on the Menades. He then climbs a tree, so he's a bit more safe to watch. The women are all in full ecstasy now. They're dissolved, they're gone. Suddenly they see movement in the tree, but they do not see Pentheus. They see a lion, a wild animal that needs to be torn, consumed, and offered to the god. And Agave, Pentheus' mother, sees the one that leads this attack. They pull him down from the tree and he's screaming, "It's me, it's Pentheus. Mother, it's Pentheus, your son." But she does not hear him. Or she might hear what the words are coming out from his mouth, but right now they mean nothing at all, because there is no me, no son, no mother. There is only the god and the sacrifice that's needed because of the ecstasy. And just like the goats and the bulls, they tear him apart. Agave takes his head, carried back to Thebes on her thyrsus, triumph, shouting about the lion she killed, the great beast she conquered in her divine strength. But the madness has not faded yet. Her father, Cadmus, talks to her, gently, carefully. "What are you holding, Agave?" "A lion's head, my trophy." "Look again, look closer. Look again." And she looks. This time she really looks. She realizes and she starts to see human features. The hair she used to brush, the face she used to kiss goodnight, her son in her hands, his blood under her fingernails. She didn't recognize herself while it was happening, and now she has to live with what not herself did. That's the fear. Not that you will become something terrible, but that you will stop being you enough to do something terrible, and then you will have to come back and live with it. That's the Dionysian dissolution. That's what happens when ecstasy goes too far. And this is why the carnival must always end. Before we focus on Greece specifically, you need to understand Carnival isn't one culture's invention. It's everywhere and always has been. Ancient Egypt, we had the festival of Osiris to honor the god of rebirth. Ancient Greece, 7th century BCE, the Dionysia, spring festival honoring Dionysos with wine, revelry, theatrical performances. This wasn't just religious duty, this was ecstasy as worship. Ancient Rome took the Greek traditions, changed them and amplified them. Dionysos became Bacchus, and in his honor they had Bacchanalia. Although these were not out in the open like carnivals, these were secret, ecstatic, wild, nightly celebrations that became really known for excessive drinking and debauchery. When Christianity spread through the Roman Empire and beyond, spring fertility festivals came to be closer to what we have as Easter today. And the pre-Lenten excess, that became the carnival. The word itself now is from the Latin carnem levare, means to remove meat, or some say carnevale, which means to farewell to meat. Either way, the idea is exactly the same. One last feast before the 40 days of fasting. Lent begins on Clean Monday or Ash Monday. Those are also known in many places as Mardi Gras. Now, across Europe, communities built local forms. Venice with elaborate masks and balls. Cologne with parades. Nice with massive floats, creating its own version. As European colonizers spread through the Americas, Spanish, Portuguese, French, they brought Carnival with them. Brazil, Trinidad, New Orleans, each place added its own flavor, its own power. African rhythm, indigenous tradition, local saints and spirits, but the bones remain the same. Control, dissolution before restraint. Today Carnival exists almost all over the world. Different names, different customs, different music, masks, excess, reversal of roles, and most importantly, an end date. Now let's go back to Greece. Modern Greece, February, March, depends when Easter falls. Apokries, Carnival season, 3 weeks, exactly 3 weeks, no more. The details change across regions, but the movement is the same. Masks, noise, satire, people in the streets, group rhythm, group laughter, a controlled period where you become other with everyone else. Naxos. This is where Dionysos was birthed. Men dress as Gunati, covered in bells, hooded, creating deafening noise in villages and alleys, driving away evil spirits, as they say. But what's what they're really doing? They're becoming loud enough, chaotic enough, that individuality and identity disappears into this collective noise. Nausa. Only unmarried men participate in this one. They dress as Genitsari, and one plays the Vula, the bride. That is also a man, performing a ritual about boys becoming men while hiding their identity behind the masks. Galaxidi. This is one of my favorites, but not my favorite yet. We have, bear with me for a moment, αλευρομουτζουρώματα, the flower war. Yes, you heard me right, flower war. Not the one that we pick and smell, the one that we make bread with. On Clean Monday or Ash Monday, the last day of the carnival, the entire town becomes a battlefield. People throwing colored flour, everyone within minutes is covered and unrecognizable. You can't tell who is who, rich, poor, young, old, local, tourist. Everyone is covered in colors. Identity dissolved into chaos and color and laughter. Carnivals. Now that's one that's really explicit, and I think it's one of my favorites. Maybe my favorite. The carnival celebration is called Burani. On Clean Monday, the entire town celebrates the phallus. Well, technically, they celebrate reproduction, fertility, spring returning, parade through the streets carrying phallic symbols, they sing obscene songs, they drink tsipuro from dawn till dawn. The church officially disapproves, but the tradition continues because it's ancient and it's Dionysian. The most direct connection to ancient Dionysian fertility rites still practiced in Greece. And here's the favorite, that's in Patra. Patra is where it all comes together, the largest carnival in Greece. One of the biggest in Europe, started in 1829, shortly after the Greek independence. 3 weeks of events, parade, masked balls, including the famous Bourbulia, where women wore domino masks and robes and they were allowed to move through the city unescorted for the first time in Greek history. Freedom through anonymity, another thing that we get from the carnivals. Treasure hunts through the city, children parades, street parties, satirical floats mocking politicians and current events. The final Sunday, the Grand Parade, almost 40,000 participants, nearly 200 groups, each with their own theme. Floats are massive, grotesque papier-mâché sculptures of politicians, celebrities, symbols of excess. And then the parade ends in the harbor. And there he is, the Carnival King, a massive effigy, maybe 15 meters tall, often caricatured to look like despised politician or a symbol of this year's corruption and excess. Grotesque fixtures, exaggerated, satirical. He has been presiding over Carnival, symbolically ruling the city completely during these 3 weeks of chaos. And now he burns. This is specifically constructed, packed with fireworks, ready for cremation. And as he burns, the symbolism is clear. This is not sacrifice like in the Menades. This is not a communion. This is a clear representation of the death of excess, death of dissolution. No goats, no bull, but we still needed that type of sacrifice to make sure that everyone understands that this is the end of this collective madness. Carnival that this in Patra happen in almost every city in Greece in a lower volume. And if you're thinking, the stories are nice, but here's the thing, I'm not tearing apart any goats on a mountain or bulls. Well, now you don't have to. The same fear shows up in modern language. Every time someone says, I blacked out, I don't remember doing that, or that wasn't me, they're describing standing outside themselves. Music, crowds, substances, sleep deprivation, non-stop stimulation, these blur the boundaries that normally holds you together. And the anxiety afterwards is not just about the consequences, it's about your identity. What did I do when I wasn't fully there? Even without substances, crowds can get into that state. Rhythm can do it. The feeling of being one body inside 1,000 bodies can be intoxicating and disorienting. Modern festival culture is Dionysian worship in new clothes. Any massive gathering where people take substances and dance until they forget who they are. This the same ecstatic dissolution that the Menades shot. Now, at this point I have to make something clear. When something like that happens, it's unavoidable that there will be accidents. Serious accidents, heart strokes, dehydration, crowd crashes, and so on. And this happens every year. And this is something that I implore you to avoid anytime you choose to dissolve. The fear is not superstition, it's pattern recognition. We know and understand that during this specific type of dissolution, you have nearly no actual control of yourself. This is why we have to have a clean Monday. Social media does a quieter version of this carnival. You perform different selves for different rooms. The work you, the family you, the online you. The mask becomes constant and performance becomes normal. And then a strange question appears. Where's the clean Monday for your life? Where is the day you take it all off, stop performing, and return to something solid? Apps that are social force you to perform a packaged self. Job interviews demand the professional self. Family gatherings require the dutiful self. Friend groups expect the fun self. Therapy wants the authentic self. But which one is real? All of them? None of them? The Menades dissolved into Dionysus and became God. You dissolve into contexts and become what? A collection of performances? A kaleidoscope of masks? Here is what I want you to remember. The fear of dissolving, the anxiety about losing yourself, about not being able to come back, about discovering there's no solid self underneath, that fear is the only thing keeping you intact. It's the internal alarm asking, do I have a way back? The Menades who survived, who came back down from mountains and went back to being the wives, the mothers, the sisters, the daughters, they survived because they understood boundaries, because the ritual had structure. Dionysian worship, despite the ecstasy and the violence and the disillusion, had really strict rules. You dissolve into the mountains, but you return to the city. The possession happens in the mountains. Then the god lets you go. When Pentheus died, it wasn't because the ritual was too wild. It was because he tried to observe without participating, to control without understanding, to impose boundaries from outside instead of accepting the boundaries built into the ritual itself. Greek apokryphs is in a way the same thing, and that goes for almost any carnival. 3 weeks, not 2, not 4, 3. This structure is what protects you. The end date that guarantees dissolution is temporary. You know that on Clean Monday you'll wash off the flour and put on normal clothes and go back to fasting and routine and self. that knowledge makes the dissolution safe. Modern life removed the structure and kept the dissolution. You're expected to perform constantly without even getting a stop. Be yourself authentically while also being professional, likable, attractive, productive, creative, social, independent, connected, spontaneous, reliable. So many masks. How? How do you hold all these selves at once without fragmenting? You can't. So you fragment, then you're terrified of this fragmentation, then you try to control it and then you fail. And you're right back to the question, who am I when I'm not performing, when I'm not wearing all those masks? Is there anyone there at all? Agave's question was, who was I when I did this? Your question in modern day is, who am I when I'm not doing this? Same terror, different context, but Carnival, real Carnival, bounded Carnival, structured Carnival offers an answer. You are whoever you are when you return. Not the ecstatic self, not the dissolved self, not the possessed. The self that comes back, that self that washes off everything, takes the masks off and says, well, that was wild, but I'm still here. That's the solid self, the one that survived dissolution because it knows its boundaries. The fear of losing yourself is the alarm system that tells you when some of your boundaries are missing, when structure is gone, when dissolution might be permanent, when you don't have a cosmos around you to put you back into yourself, even if you're way gone. So you better listen to this fear, not because you should never let go, but because letting go without boundaries is how pen thieves died, how people get trampled at festivals, how you wake up not recognizing what you did last night, how you spend years performing selves until you forget which one is real. The Menades had the mountains, the possessed state, but they always returned to the city. You need both. You need ecstasy and structure, dissolution and boundaries. Become another and coming back. The fears tells you when you're missing the second half. Carnival's secret is not the chaos, it's the countdown. It's the fact that you know there is an ending that you can't negotiate with. And the self you can trust is not the self in the mask. It's not the self behind the mask. It's the self that will come back after the mask come off. The return. So, what do you practically and actually do with this? First of all, recognize the desire to dissolve, that it's normal, it's human, it's ancient, it's there for a reason. You're not wrong for wanting to lose yourself sometimes in music, in movements, in experiences. That is necessary. But, and here's the second part, you have to build the boundaries before you dissolve and make sure you follow them completely. Not after. You have to set your own clean Monday before your carnival starts. This looks like I'll be home by 2. I'll only take 1 drink. I'll check in with someone sober. I will stop when the music stops. Whatever your boundaries are, set them when you're solid and not when you're dissolved. Third, accept that you are multiple selves, not fragmented or multi-faced. That you at work and the you at parties and the you alone are all real. You're not performing inauthentically. You are adapting appropriately to context. And this is what we have to do the way our society is built upon. Now, don't get confused. That is not disillusion. That's just complexity and the rules of our society that want us to act that way. Fourth, notice when there is no return date, when your performance never stops, when you're expected to be on constantly without structure, breaks. That's when disillusion becomes dangerous. That's when you need to create the boundaries yourself. Schedule silence, sleep, offline time, anything to get back to your own self. Fifth, fear, and this is the most important part for me. Fear is always your friend. Fear is always the one that's looking out for you. Fear is the one that brings you information. So, the next time that you're scared of losing yourself in a party, in dancing, in carnivals, anywhere, under any conditions and circumstances, if you're scared of losing yourself, ask, what boundary is missing? What is my guarantee that I will come back? If you cannot answer that, then it means that there is no end. You have to build the structure first before you dissolve. Because what Agave teaches us is ecstasy without boundaries costs everything. Even when you come back, you might not survive what you did while you were gone. Carnival teaches ecstasy with boundaries as something sacred. Mount Kitheron at night. The Menades are dancing. They're dissolving into ecstasy, into God, into collective madness. No identity, no self, just movement and sound and raw flesh and divine possession. And in the morning, they walk back down to Thebes. They take off the fawn skins, they wash the blood from their hands, they become who they were before they left. Most of them. Agave walks back down too, carrying her son, still not recognizing what she's holding, still in the ecstasy, still dissolved. And when she finally comes back, when she finally sees, she has to live with both versions of herself. The possessed Menad who killed her son, and the mother who has to grieve him. Both are here, both are real. 2000 years later, you're scrolling through Carnival photos on your phone, trying to decide if you'll go this year, wondering how far you'll let yourself go. Scared of losing control, scared of not coming back the same. You're not paranoid, you're sane. You're carrying the same fear the Menades carried, the same question Agave had to answer. If I dissolve, will I recognize myself when I come back? The Carnival says, yes, if you build the boundaries, if you set the end date, if you bring Cadmus with you, you can lose yourself in ecstasy and still come home. You can lose yourself in food and communion and still come home. You can wear the mask and take it off safely again. You can stand outside yourself and choose to step back in completely. but only if you know when it ends. That's the Carnival secret. That's the secret that we've been missing, that's given us through the fear. It is not the freedom, it's the structure. It is not the dissolution, it's the return. Dionysos gives you ecstasy, but the ritual gives you boundaries, and together they give food to one of your instincts. So when February comes and you're planning your carnival, your party, your festival, your weekend of letting loose, always remember agave. Set your way back home first. Dissolve if you want, experience ecstasy if you really want to. Just make sure you know how to return. Because the Menades figured it out thousands of years ago. The self that survives dissolution is the self that is planned for the return. Happy Carnival, and remember, if you focus on what you fear, you will still be here when it's over. I can promise you that.
If you made it this far, thank you. You're helping keep the light on for everyone still afraid of the dark. Subscribe, share the story, and I'll see you in the next chapter.